Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I wanted to talk today about healing patterns or changing patterns, shifting patterns. And I know this is on the minds of most women who are dating after divorce, because one thing we don't want to do is repeat the last marriage that wasn't ideal, that wasn't what we wanted, in whatever case that looks like for you. And so I wanted to sort of update my thoughts on what it takes to shift patterns after, at this point, 6 years of working day in, day out with women who are divorced, who are dating after divorce, rebuilding their lives after divorce, creating something extraordinary like a business or writing a book or whatever their own personal project is. I have some new thoughts around it. One of the thoughts is the level of awareness that we need around what our patterns are is higher than I previously thought. And it's higher than I think a lot of my clients come in thinking that they're going to have to do. So one of the first ones that I think a lot of my clients already know is that, oh my goodness, I had a lot of patterns in my first marriage. There was a way that I engaged in the marriage. There was a way that I dated that moved me to choose this person. They're very aware of their childhood narratives and potential trauma, things that caused them dating anxiety or codependency, things that made them move in a certain way that led them end up in that first marriage. And so they're aware of some of those things and they want to shift them, and they're in the process of shifting them. But what ends up happening is while they're dating, they sometimes gets to this point where it's like, what's going on? I thought I had healed all my patterns. I thought I had changed everything. I've done so much therapy. Why am I still encountering these kinds of toxic people? Why am I still meeting a narcissist? Why was I in a relationship with a narcissist for 3 months, right? And so they come to me like, I did all this work. Can you explain to me what is happening? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, like the patterns or sort of like conditioned behavior. It goes beyond just our behavior in dating. I have a certification in advanced feminist coaching, which takes into consideration the way the world responds specifically to women, the way women have been conditioned internally to engage in this world, the way we have been conditioned to engage in this reality, and the way other people, men, authorities, governments, law enforcement have also been conditioned to respond to men versus respond to women, respond to people of color versus respond to white people. There are 2 levels of patterns that are happening here. Actually, more than 2, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. There are our internal patterns, right? So you have the patterns that have come from childhood, that have come from your family of origin. You can see clearly when you look at your parents' marriage or the way you relate to your mother or to your father. You're like, yep, I tend to do this. I tend to do that. This tends to happen. My family always did things this way. So we see those patterns. And I think those are the patterns that I said my clients typically are very aware of, and they're doing active work on it when they come to me to work on dating. The second set of patterns that they're not aware of, or they're somewhat aware of, but not as deeply as is needed to successfully date after divorce, is their patterns around heterosexual relationships around between men and women. And we have been conditioned internally. So if you sit with this and you sit with yourself, you will see that a lot of the ideas, if you are a heterosexual woman, and if you are socialized as a woman, period, right? If the information that came at you was specifically given to you with people believing that you are a woman, and so you should be a certain way, that information has gone deeper. There was a lot larger volume of it, and we are more conditioned to believe that narrative and to believe those traditions than we might think. Because literally we're in this system, in these cultures, in this existence that has this narrative that women should be a certain way. And a lot of things that we thought were inherently biological to women, there are some things that are inherently biological to women based on the organs that you were born with and things like that. Right? Far less than we thought. The nature of relationships with men are not inherent. The leadership of men, the loyalty to men, the caretaking of men, the giving of emotional labor to men, a lot of those things, the way we think the relationships should go, are not inherent. But because we've been conditioned to believe they're inherent, we are going into this dating world sort of being programmed a certain way. And that often is messing up our ability to see things clearly, to see men clearly, to see ourselves clearly when you are in a dating situation. And one of the reasons I actually went to get that certification was because my clients were running into these issues over and over and over again. And I was like, I need language to explain to them this behavior, these patterns that they're running into. I'll talk to a client and say, hey, okay, you're on the dating app, you're talking to 3 to 5 people. This is great. Let's give it time to see which one of these people turns out to be someone that you really like, if any of them turns out. And one of the responses that I might get is, well, what if the one I really like gets mad that I'm still talking to other guys? And so immediately you see that pattern of, ooh, if a man even so much as hints that he wants to choose me, I must respond. And I must respond in his timeline. I must prove that I'm loyal. I must prove that I am delighted that he has chosen me or that he's interested or something bad will happen. Even the fact that one not being in a relationship could be interpreted as something bad, or a rejection from a man is something bad, or not being chosen by a man that you like is something bad. That is part of the narrative. So you have this very layered, insidious, narrative that as a woman, you are running into your own conditioning all of the time. And that's why dating can feel so confusing, because internally you're running into all of these knee-jerk responses, knee-jerk anxiety and anxious responses, knee-jerk fearful responses, knee-jerk decisions based on programming versus based on sitting down, unlearning that conditioning and choosing a way of thinking that is truly good for you now. So you have those internal things. There's a lot of them. I could just list them. One is the way women think about how they dress or their bodies or their attractiveness. I have talked to women who would not date until they lost the 20 pounds because they're like, well, men don't like this and men don't like that. And if I'm curvy, then no one is going to choose me, which again, they are right to think that because there's this other side that is the external pattern, the way people who are larger and have larger bodies are treated, are seen, the way that is interpreted. So that is an external pattern that the people you're going to come in contact with have. But then there's also the internal pattern where you believe it, right? Where you believe that those things that those people believe is true. So that's the internal pattern. Internal misogyny, internalized self-doubt, right? Internalized inadequacy. Any fault of the woman, not through any fault of yours, but through being conditioned for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years as a woman and not questioning that conditioning and that narrative. If anything, many of us then got on the treadmill. Of course we did, because what else were we going to do? We weren't given the opportunity to be on a different treadmill. We weren't given the opportunity to make a different choice. Nobody came and said, hey, you know what? The world says you must be in this relationship and you must go about it this way and you must be in this relationship by this age and the relationship must work. That's the conditioning we were given. And we were like, oh, okay, is that the way it is? I mean, you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, 25. And we're like, okay, sure. And you hop on the bandwagon and then you chase that relationship because you're supposed to. And so for many of us who got on that bandwagon and chased those relationships, or even if we didn't chase it, we accepted the path and worked hard on the path, and then it didn't work out. Divorce is an opportunity to redo this in a way that actually works for us. But if you still have the internalized patterns that led you into the first relationship, then dating becomes this really stressful, crazy making, because you kind of have an idea that like, okay, I don't have to do all these things. I don't have to be this certain way, but also I should do certain things and I should be a certain way. And it creates so much internalized conflict. So that's the one pattern. That's the internalized conditioning, internalized misogyny. And by misogyny, I mean like thoughts that are not helpful to you, thoughts that are, in a sense, harmful to you, that the world around you, whether it's family of origin or cultural or religious or just societal, have put inside of you. Then you have the responses you will encounter when you are dating. You will encounter people who are then also working with the same beliefs, but from the other side. So when you are dating and you're like, okay, I want to date 3 to 5 people. And in the conditioning, in the status quo, women should be a certain way type of conditioning, the belief is, well, then you're being a slut because you're dating 5 people and you should just date one person at a time and you should be loyal to that person, right? Then you will have people coming at you with that. So even if you chose not to believe that and you were like, no, this works for me because then I don't want to commit to someone too early and I don't want to waste time by dating one person at a time and only dating 4 people over a period of a year when I really need to date like 50 people to be able to find my person. You're like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But then now you go into the world and you're dating and then you meet people and they're like, why are you still dating other people? We've been together for 4 weeks. We should go exclusive. And you're like, no, but think about that. When your conditioning isn't like, if you haven't fully deconstructed and reviewed those beliefs, you're going into a world that invalidates sort of like the new beliefs that you are building. And sometimes very forcefully, and will judge you and put shame on you for wanting to do things a different way. And that can be hard. That can be hard when you are like, you have these tiny little baby new beliefs that you're working on and they seem to be working for you. And then your friends and then your parents and then your kids and the people you meet on the apps or the people you meet in person or just TV, whatever, all of it is social media. All of it is coming at you with the old beliefs that you didn't even know those old beliefs existed. But the minute you started trying to shift in a way that worked for you, there's this barrage of, hey, get back in line, conform, keep doing things the way you were doing it. I had a client who was working with me and very early on, we had gotten her profile up and she was meeting good people. And I was like, okay, she was on board with dating more than one people and taking it slow. We had like a really slow timeline for her to give her time to evaluate people and talk to them. And I remember we were coaching once a week in one-on-one coaching. And I went on vacation for 2 weeks. And during the vacation time, I think just before I left, she had like three guys on her roster. So she had 3 guys very early, right? Very early that she had just met these guys. And I was like, okay, great. We've laid out the process. We've laid out what you need to do. Have fun. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
The first step to successful online dating is your dating profile. Now, what if you could create a dating profile that makes all the difference to your online experience? Imagine having a profile so magnetic that quality matches stop mid-scroll to connect with you. The people you want to talk to you say, oh my God, I've got to talk to her. You want a profile that instantly communicates who you are at your core and attracts people who genuinely align with what matters most to you. So I want to share with you the Captivate dating profile system where you'll learn how to create a profile that stops the scroll of the person who's a match for you, captures attention immediately with authentic value-based content, showcases your true self in a way that resonates with the man you want to talk to, and naturally filters out people who are mismatches before they waste your time. So I want you to check out the Captivate dating profile system at shadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY dating. And for the price of dinner out, you can create the best dating profile ever. And when I say best dating profile, I mean it. It will be uniquely you so that you stop looking like every other woman on the apps. All right, go on over there and check it out.
And what was interesting was there were 3 people on her roster. About a few days after I went on vacation, she went on a girls' night, like a girls' dinner with her friends. I think she was like 4 friends. These were her old friends. They went to her church, all of the things. And they had this conversation and they asked how dating is going, which is one of the things that for some people, it is not helpful to tell your friends how dating is going, because if they are steeped in the old way of thinking, they are steeped in women should be like this and women should be like that. And, they've been married for 40 years and they definitely believe that you should follow the path that they followed. It might be unhelpful sometimes. So picking your wing women carefully, your wingmen carefully is one way of changing these patterns. Anyway, so they were like, you're dating 3 people at a time? That's terrible. And then they went into all of this like biblical beliefs. Now, she wasn't sleeping with 3 people at a time, right? She was just going to restaurants and going to coffee shops and sitting with 3 people, 3 different people, and having conversations. But they were so steeped in their tradition, like to them, there was a shock to their system. And they gave her quote unquote wise counsel to pick one and date one at a time, which was the opposite of what we had discussed. And that happens too. As a coach, it can be frustrating sometimes, but then I know my clients have to go through their own journeys and learn their own things and sort of integrate what I teach them into their own lives. So I don't get mad about it. There's no judgment. And so she did. So she picked one of the guys immediately and broke up with the other 2. I mean, it's not even a breakup because it was all very early, and just told the other 2 that she couldn't talk to them anymore, blah, blah, blah. And so within the week and a half left that I was gone, this guy had come to her home, found out where she was, like she had invited him to her home. They had gone through like a whole breakup cycle that would take and a whole bunch of drama in a week and a half that would normally take people like 3 to 6 months to go through. Horrible. Like at one point she had to call the police to, let them know that this guy was potentially stalking her and coming back to her home, because she had let him come to her home one time, and when things were not working out, she was like, no, like literally in a week and a half, so much had happened. And I was like, oh my God. She deviated from the process, which is give it time to play out while not being in a committed relationship. But she went into this committed relationship in less than 2 weeks with this person. And so that was like, a lot that sort of had to walk back. But it wasn't her fault that happened. It wasn't even her friend's fault. It was her own conditioning, her own programming, her friend's programming. And the way she was programmed, she's a religious person, the way she was programmed, the way her friends were programmed is the same programming that the world comes at you with. That's the thing. Men on the apps come at you with that program. And I remember there was a guy that I went on one date with, and I was like, hey, I would appreciate it if you didn't hug me. I've told this story so many times, no hugs. I really just didn't want all that. None of that. Like, we are strangers. Let's just meet like we are 2 adult strangers for the first time. And for him, it was like, why I don't know. What do you mean I can't hug you? What do you mean I can't hug you? And I was like, why would you? Right? But he's been conditioned to believe that access to my body is like a given. So he wasn't trying to be mean. To him, it was unexpected that I would not let him hug me on a first date. Like, that's just the water that we swim in. That's just the air that we're breathing. So you have your own internalized patterns, right? And then you have other people's internalized patterns that you will encounter when you are dating. And you really have to understand what those are. So here are my thoughts on how to do that, right? So the first thing is to start to notice. You've got to slow things down and start to notice what is going on with you, what is going on in the general narrative that you are in and what is going on with the people. Like when someone says something to you and, you're like, oh, I got to change what I'm doing. Notice what is happening. What is the pattern? What is the thinking behind what this person is saying? What is the thinking behind what I am saying and doing? What is the societal pattern that may be at play here? What is the traditional thinking or religious thinking that might be at play there? So notice all of that. And that is a skill that many of us were not given, many of us do not have. We've got to start by observing what is happening, taking a step back and observing. The second step is do this when you start to receive information through observation. Do it without any judgment. One of the reasons why many people cannot to do this work is that the first thing that comes up is judgment and shame. Part of the judgment is judgment and shame that they didn't see this before, judgment that they've been working this way, judgment that they're not conforming. Like there's just a lot. We're very shame-based humans. Humans are very shame-based. I mean, there are very few cultures that I see, very few environments where people are not walking with just shame and attacking themselves about the results that they're getting in this world. So you've got to learn self-compassion and learn to be able to see what is happening without judging yourself for what is happening, and even if shame does come up, because if you have been programmed to feel shame, then you need to learn to process that emotion. So that's part of like the no shame part. So shame might come up, right? And then you don't attack yourself just because shame came up. You learn the process of self-compassion and loving yourself through that so you can move to the next level. You cannot move from the old to the new without processing the feelings that are going to come up in the middle. Like it's just a thing. And so once you're able to do that, then you can now decide for yourself what's actually effective for you. And that's a lot of what I did when I was dating. I was like, okay, there's an expectation that on a first date, the guy's going to give me a kiss. And listen, that works for some people. I have some clients who love that. They love the kisses on the first date and they actually go after that on the first date. There is no rules. It's literally, what is the pattern? What is the thinking? What do I want? And so deciding what is effective for you. For me, it was just not effective to have all of that like major romance happening that early. It clouded my ability to really see, okay, who is this person? I needed like space to see a person. So a lot of that excess romance so early was not helpful for me. But for some other people, that is not an issue. So you're noticing the patterns, both your own imperative to be with people. Where did that come from? Your desires, your actions, then the other people and how they are approaching. Each individual is approaching you, what they are doing, what's the thinking behind what they're doing. How do you want to respond to that? Going through the self-compassion and then deciding what's effective for you. What actually works for you? What is the pattern? What is a new pattern that you want to build that is going to be helpful for you when you are dating? What are the patterns you want to shed? You need to be able to name those, just literally get to the point where you're like, yep, these are the 5 patterns that I've been responding to in certain ways, and I want to change that. Like you need to know what those are and how they've been affecting you in the past. And then deciding, right, what's actually effective. What if you talk too much on a date and you are oversharing and in your own head and you're not thinking about whether or not you actually like this person, you're more in that energy of like wanting them to like you and you notice that pattern, then we can do the work of, okay, where is this pattern coming from? What is the new pattern to replace that with? So it's not just noticing the pattern. Sometimes I'm on social media, I see these conversations over and over and over again about dating anxiety and this and that. And it's just like naming and naming. And they keep naming the problem. They keep naming the problem. There's not a lot of help with changing the pattern. Right? So deciding what's actually effective, creating those new patterns. So when you see a lot of naming and naming and naming and naming, and you want to actually say, okay, I've named the problem, and you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a diagnosis. It can just be whatever you want to name it when you notice it. Deciding what's going to be effective instead and what you want to shift to, and then doing the work to create those new patterns, right? And then tweaking them as you go, because it really is a learning process. Unless you had the privilege and the blessing of having a lot of these conversations when you were younger and the patterns being demonstrated to you by, your parents or someone else who loved you enough, or just learning them on your own by reading and studying. This is the time to learn the patterns. right? And then tweaking them and being like, okay, I'm just want to adjust. Okay, I went too extreme on this one, on this end, or I went too extreme here. I'm going to bring it back to the middle and, bring back some nuance and some balance to it. It really is a process. And when you have self-compassion and self-love, you can do that. Even when you make a mistake, you can correct, one, without overcorrecting, and two, without beating yourself up and creating just all of that mental and emotional exhaustion that happens a lot in dating. And then you can use this to create your own path to meeting the type of person that would be right for you. Okay. I hope this was helpful for you in thinking about why you still keep running into the same kinds of people, or the same things keep happening over and over when you are dating. There are patterns at play. There are your patterns. There are patterns in society. There are patterns of thinking. And the way to change that is to take a step back and really start to observe and notice these patterns and how they are impacting you. Okay, I want to thank you for your time and attention today, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to ShadeCurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.